On July the 20th last year, famine was declared in Somalia, and within 6 weeks the famine had widened to comprise 6 parts of the south of Somalia. At that time, 50 children were dying every day, and our experts predicted that the entire south would deteriorate into famine. Tens of thousands of Somalis died in the crisis last year, and we'll never know the exact number. But we do know that the situation would have been far worse without the extraordinary response that flowed in after the declaration of famine. What we need to do this year is to sustain the large-scale humanitarian activities that were started then to ensure that we address the continuing crisis in the country. The influx of funds and innovative aid programming permitted a rapid scale-up in the humanitarian response and ensured the Somali population had increased access to food. Within 90 days, the number of people receiving food each month more than tripled to 2.6 million. Hundreds of thousands of acutely malnourished children received nutrition supplements. Mass vaccination campaigns reduced cases of measles by almost 50%. By November, 500,000 people in the affected parts of Bai, Bakol and Lower Shabelle were lifted out of famine conditions. The situation continued to improve, largely due to the effective delivery of aid under extremely difficult circumstances and helped by an exceptional harvest at the beginning of the year. While famine conditions are no longer present, we need to make no mistake that the absence of famine does not mean that people aren't still in crisis. Today, some 2.5 million people are still in need of assistance, and a further 1.2 million could slide back into crisis without sustained assistance. Malnutrition rates and mortality rates have improved, but still remain amongst the highest in the world. In parts of Somalia, the situation will deteriorate before it improves. Sadly, the April to June rains began late and were distributed unevenly. Aid has to be sustained. We don't expect the South to deteriorate into famine in the coming months, but that shouldn't in any way lessen the urgency with which we continue to act and provide support. We need to finish the job that we started when we announced the famine last year, and act now to consolidate the gains and to break the cycle of repeated crisis that continues to exist in Somalia. And to do this, we have to work hard to restore people's lives and livelihoods. Famine conditions developed in the middle of last year because impoverished people were unable to withstand the drought and the massive rise in food prices. By building up Somalia's ability to cope with future drought, we can prevent future shocks from developing into humanitarian catastrophe. Humanitarian NGOs and UN agencies completed the mid-year review of the Consolidated Appeal for Somalia. It will be launched on Thursday. Our revised appeal is now for $1.16 billion. Half of that amount has been received, but we do need the remaining $576 million to implement our strategy to address the needs of 3.8 million Somalis through the end of the year. Humanitarians need these funds to provide urgent assistance for the most vulnerable while building up Somalia's ability to cope with future drought and other shocks. To repeat, we need to help 2.5 million people obtain life's basic necessities such as clean water, sanitation facilities and medical care. We need to build sustainable livelihoods for people who've been left with few or no resources after years of drought and conflict. We know that resolving Somalia's humanitarian crisis will require more than a sustained humanitarian response this year. Drought in the Horn of Africa is recurrent, and Somalia is at the epicenter of this crisis. Somalia has been affected by conflict for more than 20 years. Political and security issues need to be resolved in as short a time as possible to ensure Somalia's recovery. Civilians have so far continued to bear the brunt of the conflict. And one of the real tragedies of Somalia is that children are still extensively used in armed conflict. And all parties to the conflict must at least try to remedy and put an end to this sad situation. Humanitarian organisations are now in a position to build on the gains of the past year. Following the declaration of famine, we all proved that we could make a difference even in areas where access was extremely restricted. We worked with new local partners and enhanced the new ways of working, including cash and employment schemes, to ensure aid reached the most vulnerable. And in the last year, many new international partners engaged with Somalia's humanitarian assistance needs. Turkey and the Gulf states provided funds and aid agencies to help roll back the famine, and their commitment made a crucial difference. Overall coordination amongst all humanitarian actors has been strengthened in the past year to increase the effectiveness and the better overall distribution of humanitarian activities. Last year, we could have done even more if funding had been in place before the declaration of famine. Now what we're asking is to ensure that flexible funding continues to be made available for our strategy. If we build on the gains that we've achieved now, we can help avoid catastrophe in the future. In my travels around Somalia over the last year, many people still tell me how much they appreciate the key role that humanitarian organisations and you in the media have played in calling attention to this crisis. I hope that one day we will be appreciated for going that extra mile now to help Somalians break the cycle of drought, famine and crisis in the country. Thank you very much.